The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending wherever you are. Warm welcome to today's ISQua webinar on accreditation, survey reliability, techniques to achieve an accreditable survey outcome. This webinar will examine the motivations for becoming a surveyor, the issues and influences that impact the surveyors during the survey process, and the effectiveness of the methods that they use in dealing with these influences. I would like to welcome our today's presenter, Dr. Lena Lowe, who is currently an Executive Director, Corporate and Surveyor Workforce at the Australian Council on Healthcare Standards. Her role involves strategic development and operationalization of healthcare accreditation system, with responsibility for strategy and management of financial management, information technology, corporate and human resources, surveyor workforce, business analytics, business support services, and organization-wide risk management. Dr. Lena Lowe is a visiting fellow at the University of New South Wales, Australia, Macquarie University, a visiting guest lecturer at the University of Technology, Sydney, Faculty of Health, a fellow of AICD and associate fellow of the Australasian College of Health Service Management. She is also a member of the ISQua Accreditation Council and has led accreditation survey teams for ISQua. Just to remind you all that today's presentation will take approximately 45 minutes, and we will leave 15 minutes at the end for any questions that you may have. If you have the questions, please type them into the question or chat box provided, and they will be posed to Dr. Lena Lowe at the end of her session. So now sit back, enjoy the presentation, and over to you, Dr. Lena Lowe.
Thank you for your kind introduction, Juliana. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for your interest in this webinar and sharing your time with me. I'm just going to click in. I think my slides have stopped. Okay, sorry about that one. The background of my webinar is that it is a combination of practical and academic perspectives. The practical perspective is, as Juliana mentioned, related to my vocation, while the academic is from my PhD thesis. The foundation of this webinar is the Australian Council on Healthcare Standards. That's the acronym is ACHS, which is headquartered in Sydney. ACHS is a not-for-profit organization and the third oldest accreditation agency accredited by ISQua. ACHS was founded 40 years ago and currently operates in Australia and 18 other countries, where we accredit more than 1,700 healthcare organizations. These range from private and public sector hospitals, day procedure centers and hospitals, corporate health services, prisons, methadone clinics, drug and alcohol services, office-based surgeries, mental health and dental facilities. This map of Australia on the left shows the states that are within Australia, and you can see New South Wales on the right-hand side. Our headquarters is within New South Wales in Sydney, and our surveyors are from all the various states listed on the map, and we also accredit organizations all around Australia in the map. The globe on the right-hand side shows the countries we are involved in, mainly Asia Pacific and the Middle East. This slide highlights my relationship with the ACHS surveyor workforce and our philosophy of accreditation surveys. One of my portfolios is management of our 400+ peer review surveyors, who are a key component of our accreditation program. Our philosophy is that the accreditation survey should be an educational and positive developmental experience for both the organization and surveyor. They learn from each other, and it should not be one of those stick-beating type of occasions. ACHS has a collaborative peer review approach between surveyors and the organization under review. A key role of the surveyor workforce is to conduct on-site reviews of the quality and safety aspects of the healthcare organization against a set of prescribed standards. In Australia, accreditation is mandatory, and there is a core set of government standards, and organizations have to do the 10 national standards, but they also have the option to choose the ACHS 5 additional standards. Our surveyors are from multiple disciplines, including nursing, allied health, administration, and medicine, and are the main source of my PhD data. As with all PhDs, a lot of time is spent on literature reviews. The academic research highlights the importance of reliability and accuracy in the survey process, and especially highlights the lack of research in this area. What does some of the literature review tell us? The issues and influences that impact on surveyors during the survey process and the closely related topics of survey and inter-rater reliability remain under-researched. This is the findings from many researchers such as Greenfield and Braithwaite in 2007, Greenfield and Braithwaite, again another publication 2008A, Shaw 2003A, Greenfield et al. 2009. Some other research also states that despite its importance, the topics of survey and inter-rater reliability remain largely unexplored. Greenfield et al. In 2009 also in his findings challenged the belief that the process of accreditation is objective and many of the complex facets can be quantified. I've only listed the authors and the year of their publication in my slides, but I'm happy to provide more details of these publications for those who are interested. In order to determine techniques to achieving a credible survey outcome, I first had to identify what influences and issues impact on accreditation survey reliability. My study, therefore, had to incorporate these major areas. So two of the major areas investigated in my thesis are, firstly, the influences and issues facing surveyors in the hospital-based survey process, and secondly, the techniques they adopt to deal with these influences. This slide provides a summary of the research areas and research questions of my PhD study. The area of motivations for becoming a surveyor is not the focus of this webinar. Instead, because in the interest of time, I'm going to focus on the two research areas from my PhD. The first one relates to issues and influences that might impact the surveyor whilst conducting the survey and have implications for survey reliability. There were three key research questions in relation to this research area. Firstly, what are the issues and influences that exist at a survey which may challenge survey reliability? Secondly, are surveyors aware of these issues and influences, and how effective and consistent are they in identifying them? And thirdly, what implications do the issues and influences have for survey reliability during the accreditation survey process? The other research area deals with the methods for dealing with or mitigating against these issues and influences. There were 5 areas for the research questions. What solutions are surveyors able to suggest to mitigate these issues and influences to facilitate survey reliability? Secondly, how proficient are surveyors at suggesting solutions to influences, and can they demonstrate this proficiency? The third question, what characteristics of the survey process itself promotes survey reliability? Fourth, what implications do the suggested solutions have for survey reliability during the accreditation survey process? And finally, can the case study exercise used to investigate this research area form a basis for future training of ACHS surveyors? Because my PhD related very closely to the organization ACHS who I work for, these were really interesting questions, and for those of you who work in accreditation agencies as well, I'm sure we've always been asking ourselves these questions too. My literature research highlighted, especially focusing on the publication of Greenfield et al. In 2009, which identified 6 factors that promoted and challenged reliability. This was quite difficult to find in terms of literature reviews because there was so little that has been published on it. So Greenfield's 6 factors are the accreditation program, including organization, documentation, and surveyor accreditation. This is the first factor that promotes and challenges reliability. The second, the relationship of the organization, the accrediting agency, the survey team, with preconceived expectation of an organization's survey can be self-fulfilling. The organization's reputation with the accrediting organization can influence expectations, staff conduct, accreditation agency staff, and survey team behavior. Thirdly, accreditation agency ability, the experience and management skills to manage and draw together the parts of the complex survey process. The surveyor workforce experience and credibility, management of this surveyor workforce, ensuring the surveyors have common expectations, sufficient time to perform their role and are aligned to the accrediting agency. And finally, the survey team conduct and coordinator role. Survey teams must be appropriate, utilize collaboration and team decision-making. The coordinator should facilitate the team and maintain an open relationship with the organization. Individualistic behavior can undermine a team assessment. These findings were really interesting because these were 6 factors to hone into, and from my perspective in the study, my thesis would either support these findings or disprove them. In terms of the tools and techniques that accreditation agencies use to promote survey reliability, interestingly enough, there were actually more publications and research relating to this. The Greenfield et al. In 2009 found that training of surveyors is an essential part of an accreditation agency's role, and survey reliability is an important issue. Frisino in 2005 listed a range of tools and techniques that accreditation agencies utilize to promote survey reliability. These include training of surveyors, ongoing appraisal of their performance, ensuring surveyors are independent of the survey organization, and surveyors should be experienced and act according to a code of conduct and professional standards. Charles Shaw, in researching for the World Health Organization in 2004, agreed in principle to what Frisino had listed in his tools and techniques, and also added that the importance of surveyor selection and training but also the emphasis on the report production, agreement with procedures, and the independence of the accreditation award process. These were determined as important factors in attaining objectivity and reliability. Again, the interest for my study was to either disprove or support these techniques and tools from other researchers. This diagram shows the 3 stages of my research design in the PhD methodology. I will focus on stages 2 and 3, which are more relevant to this webinar. Stage 2 involved in-depth interviews with surveyors to identify influences at survey. So the interviews were where we got the data and information from to create the case studies, which was then stage 3, and over 400 surveyors were involved in the use of these case studies. The diagram reflects the steps within the case study. The scenarios formulated for the case study utilized situations the surveyors interviewed had experienced themselves at survey. So the scenarios were provided to the surveyors at their face-to-face training days. The surveyors were formed into teams to closely replicate a real-world surveying environment. For example, the team would have as a minimum a doctor, a nurse, and administrator. The scenarios were then reviewed by each survey team, who listed as a team the influences and what solutions and techniques they thought were necessary to deal with these influences and issues. The data on influences and solutions identified by all the survey teams were then aggregated together. I'll share now with you one of these case studies and also its results. Case study 2 is this slide relates to. It reflects a real situation where organization X had been negatively portrayed by the media in Australia nationally. It was well known within the Australian healthcare industry that if you ever have certain staff members, like those from organization X, working in your hospital, you need to make them disappear. On the other hand, it was also well known in the industry that when the area has been hit by natural disasters, and the location of this hospital is that it is quite prone to being hit by natural disasters, Organization X has provided excellent local assistance and has a strong and verified reputation for dealing with a variety of emergency situations. The surveyor who experienced this is a keen and unbiased professional who uses evidence-based decision-making tools. However, there was still a certain level of sympathy for Organization X, which he was about to survey. This scenario, this case study, was given to all the surveyor workforce in their development days, and this is the result from the case study, where the top issues identified in the case from the surveyor's perspective was that there was the issue of bias, prior perceptions by the survey team, maybe a lack of objectivity. The press and media issues were obviously in their minds as well, and also the issues of dealing with the organization's sensitivities and morale when they go into survey. So these were quite a combination of factors that the survey teams felt they would have to deal with going into such an organization, and therefore there would be definitely a margin of scope for being affected by these issues. What techniques identified by these survey teams were quite interesting. The data was actually sourced from 122 survey teams representing about 350 surveyors. So each of them worked in their survey teams and came up with similar techniques to deal with the issues that they had identified. And techniques identified was that the survey teams need to remain objective together. They need to gather evidence and really survey to the standards, be sensitive to the organization, emphasize the positives of the organization, and keep open lines with the hospital communication, and as a team constantly communicate with each other to ensure that the issues are dealt with to prevent inter-rater reliability issues. So if you recall, one of my earlier slides highlighted the Greenfield et al. 2009 publication, which identified 6 factors that promoted and challenged reliability. The next 2 slides list the 14 aggregated identified factors that promote and challenge survey reliability and credibility from all the case studies. Of interest is that all 6 of Greenfield's factors are matches within the 14 factors identified in my research, thus confirming support for Greenfield's study. These 14 factors that promote and challenge survey reliability and credibility are the surveyor's professional background, personal characteristics and independence, a cohesive and collaborative survey team, a diverse and appropriate mix of skills within the team, the role of the survey coordinator and the importance of leadership, the surveyor training and ACHS support infrastructure, planning and management of the survey process, peer review and collaborative approach to the survey process, the attitude of staff and management, status of the organization being surveyed, hospital reputational issues, including adverse media. Politics, this is quite unique to Australia, whether it's local at the hospital level or at an area and state level, or whether it's federal-based politics. Preconceived opinions, the accreditation program itself, and surveyor awareness of the need to be reliable and credible. The next slide lists the 9 techniques and tools to achieve a credible outcome as achieved by the surveyors, starting just from the top: professional, open, non-judgmental approach to survey. The surveyors felt that as professionals, they can depend on themselves to be open and non-judgmental and also have a good outcome in terms of this type of approach to survey. This was very important for them because from their perspective as professionals, if they would be biased and be affected by issues happening within the organizations, their own professionalism would be questioned. So this was a very important tool for them, that protecting their own reputations and ensuring a fair and objective survey as a team would ensure that their professional integrity was protected. Preparation for the survey: be aware of issues prior to the survey commencing, so be prepared, Girl Guide motto. ACHS training and support during the survey. This was felt to be important to them, knowing that there were other resources to support them outside of the survey. Collaboration, open discussion, and a team approach together and also with the organization. Application of the standards, evidence-based findings. They believed as a group that if you stayed true to the standards and find evidence based on what the standards require, that should mitigate inter-rater reliability issues, and that leads into validation of findings as well. Utilization of their own expertise and knowledge was an important factor in their peer review surveyor model, and which they felt was an important technique and tool. Dealing with issues through an effective coordinator. All the surveyors identified that the leader, the coordinator, was a very important element in terms of mitigating against inter-rater reliability issues. Communication with the organization was also important. Of note is that these techniques and tools align with the publications listed in the previous slide from publications from studies by Greenfield, Frissino, and Shaw. And in summary, to wrap up the academic perspective from my research, the results confirmed the presence of influences and issues that challenged survey reliability and credibility. The surveyors were very open and frank about the awareness of possible influences and issues that could impact the accreditation result. And the study definitely showed that surveyors recognize the imperative of being fair and balanced as they go into a survey. The studies also highlighted the solutions surveyors have available to them. I think having the knowledge that and awareness of the issues made it easier for them to find the solutions as well. It lends support to current survey processes whilst acknowledging that further research into reliability and credibility would be advantageous. My study also definitely supported the findings of previous research into accreditation reliability, notably from Greenfield, Shaw in the World Health Authority, and Frissino. I would now like to share with you the practical application of some of the techniques that ACHS uses to maintain survey reliability. The findings from my research were really some of the techniques and tools that we were aware of on the peripheral, and from the study and from what the surveyors themselves identified as issues and also the techniques and tools that were needed to help them and assist with the issues of inter-rater reliability, we strengthened how we worked as an accreditation agency by focusing on the use of these accreditation tools and techniques. As a start, this is the most recent ACHS News cover page article. The ACHS News is distributed to more than 6,000 contacts, comprising members, surveyors, stakeholders, both nationally and internationally, and is a very effective communication medium for ACHS. In this article, our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Christine Dennis, relates her experience of inter-rater reliability from a dog show perspective. For us, understanding inter-rater reliability is not only unique to healthcare accreditation. It is prevalent in all aspects of our lives, especially in watching any event which uses judges, such as Olympics ice skating or a dog show, which relies on human observers maintaining a degree of consistency between observers. I'm not sure if you have the same television programs that we have in Australia, but over the past months, there have been numerous heated debates nationally over the judges' decisions in the reality programs here in Australia, such as MasterChef, The Voice, and Dancing with the Stars. Needless to say, the photo in this slideshow shows Christine's mother with her winning prized corgi. All was good at this competition, but as Christine recalls, there were heated discussions if the corgi did not win, and praise for the excellent judging when she did. I think all of us in the accreditation arena understand when complaints of inter-rater reliability gets raised, that it is very easily understood if you would look at this context that explains inter-rater reliability. The next two slides provide more information on better understanding the issues of inter-rater reliability and the educational dog show analogy used by Hitt and Helms in 2009 to deal with this. The dog show analogy has been used to explore parallels between the treatment and assessment of school students and canines at a dog show. This analogy-based activity was believed to better present an approach to learning that was compatible with the way people think and help people reflect on their behaviors, attitudes, and assessment biases in a parallel analog. How was this done? Basically, on the day of the dog show analogy, students, the trainee teachers, are shown a video clip of a best in show judging. Before the judge makes his or her decision, the video is stopped and the students are asked to choose a winner and provide reasons for their choices. The students then share their views on the judge's decision and are asked to infer what type of criteria the judge used to make his or her decision. Hitt and Helm stated that with reflection, practice, and perseverance, it is possible to create more objective and equitable learning environments. The newsletter also highlights some general strategies used by ACHS in relation to addressing inter-rater reliability. From an ACHS perspective, we continue to improve validity of assessments and keep perceptions and biases in check with articles such as this one that's been written. We also listen to the feedback from our state advisory committees Australia-wide, as well as feedback from our members. We contribute to research with Greenfield and also the universities in an attempt to better understand and achieve improved inter-rater reliability. We are mindful that the challenge in terms of consistency in and across assessments is a demanding task. It's also a challenge that it is described as being evident, as noted above, in many areas of society, and therefore not just unique to the healthcare accreditation arena. A key technique ACHS focuses on to achieving a credible survey outcome is the training of its surveyors. As you recall from the tools and techniques from my study, training was considered key for both surveyors and coordinators. We cover in training topics such as preparation for survey, approaches to survey in a collaborative, non-judgmental, evidence-based validation methodology. Some of our training methods include surveyor development days face-to-face each year in different states and also internationally. The Coordinator Development Day, we train all our coordinators face-to-face together every year to ensure consistency and focus on strong leadership. We provide trainings and updates, free education for our surveyors at any ACHS calendar workshop and also any webinars we hold. We have mandatory quizzes for surveyors. These are usually really short and sharp, multiple choice type of questions, and they range between 3 to 5 questions as a maximum, and they're used really to clarify any current issues that other survey teams have experienced, any gray areas, so that you ensure that all surveyors have the same message. We use e-learning, online training as part of mandatory training as well, and also hold specialized training modules, for example, for mental health and consumer surveyors. The surveyor website contains latest tools and resources. There's also support provided during survey by our staff at the office, the surveyor workforce manager, customers. We have 8 customer services managers, and we provide also a toll-free number for our surveyors. Surveyor newsletters are almost quarterly, and this helps keep the surveyors up to date, and also the use of bulk emails if necessary for any urgent messages to go out to them. In terms of new surveyors, we have a mentoring program. When we take in new surveyors, they undergo a 3-day induction program and enter this mentoring program if they're successful. They also have novice status, and this means that they are on probation for 1 year. And during this year, they're always with a senior coordinator as a mentor. We provide also a surveyor handbook to help our surveyors as a shortcut when they're out on the road. Surveyor selection for us, for survey teams, is critical, really vital to ensure that appropriately skilled survey teams match to the organization. Some key variables that are looked at in terms of the surveyor selection is basically that, as it's a peer review, we ensure that the surveyors who are going to survey the organization are the same level, whether they are from the same sector, looking at the organization profile to tie them in with the specialties required from the organization, and the skills team mix together with what previous experiences the surveyors have that could fit to the organization, and making sure that there is no conflict of interest in the team. This ensures a good fit and good experience. And in relation to the allocation process, we also focus on surveyor allocation to address inter-rater reliability issues. Sorry. For example, if we have 15 hospitals within a group membership and they're not going for survey as one whole organization, we try to make sure that there may be 3 coordinators who have shared responsibility for the group. This helps us to ensure that there's constant and consistent understanding of the structure of the group. also, this is in case one of the coordinators for any reason is unable to make the survey for that group, the other coordinators can stand in and act as replacement. For consistency, we may also re-invite some surveyors from previous surveys to join the new survey team members at their next survey. We also allocate surveyors based on their fit to the organization in terms of specialties. This allocation process is quite a tricky process because to ensure that the surveyors are a good fit to the organization, it depends very much that the organization does not cancel or defer a survey, which might take this team out of the mix. So there's always a balancing act during this process. I guess, however, in the end, we will all agree, I think, that everyone is an individual with different perspectives, and it is about how we manage the inter-rater reliability issues with different tools and techniques, but perspectives from individuals are always going to be different, and isn't it wonderful? Otherwise, life could be pretty boring. So I think this just illustrates how differently people perceive things, and I rest my case. So thank you, and I think I will hand over to you, Juliana.
Thank you, Lena. Thank you for this fantastic presentation, and thank you for the practical tips that our audience find very useful. We do have a couple of questions, so we will start from them. But just to remind everybody else that it's not late. If you do have any questions, you can still type them into the question or chat box provided, and we'll try to answer them as many as we can. So the first question is from Dolapo Amusan, and it stands as follows. Due to the deeply psychological nature of human beings, how can we absolutely ensure that surveyors remain as objective as possible? He believes that an awareness of adverse media and politics, for example, tells us that we are likely to become biased, but it doesn't totally prevent us from being biased. How do we prevent being affected at all, he asks.
Thank you for the question, and that was part of why I went into the study, the research as well. The survey teams are usually more than a team of a single person, and as I mentioned earlier, part of the peer review process is that the surveyors themselves are professionals. So even though we as individuals read something in the media, I think we take it at its face value to say, okay, this is what the media is saying. But if I'm a professional going into the organization and with a very clear mandate that you have to go in as an objective observer to look at what the organization is doing and put aside the media reports, because media is what media is. They will never have good news because nobody wants to read it. It will always be adverse media because that's what sells. So that is obviously something that as a person we never forget as well. It's in the back of our minds. But once you go in there and you meet the people within the organization, in talking with them in that professional environment, and also not forgetting that as a survey team, the survey teams are usually a minimum of 3, and sometimes it could be a maximum of up to 10 surveyors in a team. And therefore, in a group, you would not be one person that is going to make the decision about accreditation for that organization. You are actually speaking and debating with each other about what your findings, and that's why the techniques are so important and the tools, because it talks about ensuring that you're looking at the application of the standards, focusing on evidence-based findings and validation of findings. So these factors should, and also in terms of debating together as a team, these are the type of tools and techniques that should prevent the inter-rater reliability issue or the influence of just someone saying, oh, you know, the media said that they were no good and that this clinician was a fiasco, a disaster for the hospital. That might just be one person from that hospital. And when you go to the accreditation survey, your findings might find that it's just not the same for the other people. So it's being fair and consistent in your dealings and really focusing on looking at what the findings tell you. I hope that answered his question.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. That's a fantastic answer. The next question is from Patricia McKernan, and she's thanking you for this very informative and insightful presentation. And she's interested in your thoughts on the idea of conducting systematic survey reliability checks in real time as a means of objectively validating inter-rater reliability and credibility.
So can I clarify, is that going into unannounced surveys?
So basically, she's interested in kind of on your thoughts regarding the idea of conducting systematic surveyor interreliability checks in real time as a means of objectively validating inter-rater reliability. So I think that's the key thing here is the real time.
In terms of real time, which is why we invest a lot in the coordinators, in the leaders of the team, and it was another technique and tool that was identified that you need to deal with issues through the effective coordinator, because the coordinator as a leader of the team is someone that we have invested a lot in and who takes the responsibility for the whole team. So as the survey is progressing, the coordinator is actually mentoring as well and having a global overview of how the surveyors are performing. And when they get together, it's about the coordinator being the most senior of the team, being able to assess and feedback about how each of the surveyors are performing. So that's in terms of in a real-time environment at the survey, when people are coming back to tell the coordinator or the survey team that, oh, you know, one of the staff has told me this, and again, it goes back to the evidence-based finding, which is the coordinator would then tell the surveyor, what are you basing that on? Is it fact? And not just because someone said something. And if the surveyor says, oh, I looked at something and my impression is this, it's still a team discussion about whether that is the correct interpretation or not, because people can actually see things differently, and that's in real time as well. So for instance, we had a situation where a surveyor was going around and said, I haven't seen any signs at all that hand washing is mandatory. There's no signs anywhere around the hospital. And the other surveyor went around, and that's a perception, you know, and then the other surveyor came back and said, no, I have seen these signs, but the signs were really not stated clearly that in words to say, wash your hands in an instruction. It was very much about diagrams. It was more like a cartoon character and looking at the importance of washing hands and the germs all floating around that person. So it's a bit like this diagram where you look at it and say the diagram's a bomb or it's a tree. The perception of one surveyor walking around the hospital and the thinking that from his perspective, I haven't seen any signs that say you must wash your hands. And yet another surveyor who's quite open looks at it and says, well, hang on, I did see some, but they were, like cartoon drawings about instructions. And so when they come back together, and this is a real life situation, when they came back together, they discussed it, and as a team, each was able to help the other. Do you know what I mean? In terms of saying, well, yes, that was your perception, but I did see it. And so the surveyor who was looking for just the words definitely took that bias away. The issue was not there about saying that was all I wanted to see, the words, because he then came around and said, oh yes, I can see that there's more than one way to look for something.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. We have a number of questions, and the next one is from Marianne Street. A bit of a challenging question, but it's posed as follows. Do many healthcare organizations fail accreditation? And does the survey team revisit their decisions more rigorously when they are concerned about it?
I can talk from ACHS's perspective because that's the organization I work in. And accreditation is not about passing or failing. A lot of it is that it's a continuous quality improvement journey where you go in at a point in time to an organization, and what you do is that you're helping the organization to evaluate whether its systems and processes are working in relation to providing safe quality care for the patients. And unless it's a really high-risk issue that gets picked up, and usually in hospitals you wouldn't expect that because that is their core, the core of what they are there for. So in terms of the accreditation survey itself, you go in at a point in time, you look at the key risk areas and help the organization on its journey. When we find the system in Australia is when you find an area of risk, there is conversation with the organization, and if it's, for instance, where the organization has not had a fire safety inspection check, for instance, which is required, then what happens is they may be given 90 days to fix the issue, and within that 90 days, we will send a survey team back again to ensure that they have done that fire safety check. So I hope that explains it. There have been occasions, obviously, where I think organizations have failed accreditation, but also the accreditation agency, I think, is not the one that would say, well, if you failed it, you have to close it down because that's the government's responsibility. And I think in relation to that, no hospital has been closed down in Australia as far as I'm aware because of accreditation.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. The next question is from Juan Limo, and he's looking to get a practical advice in order to achieve improvement selection of surveyors. So what would you suggest to improve selection of surveyors in order to enhance credibility and reliability? Let's say background, area of expertise, teamwork, leadership skills. Is anything in particular that you would like to suggest that they should be concentrating on?
I think having definitely a database on the surveyor performance management system for the surveyors is really important, because you need to be sure that the qualifications of the surveyor are constantly reviewed. So our reappointment process is every 2 years, where we see if they are still working within the industry, whether they still have the same specialties to match with the organization. And we also do have criminal checks, And education for surveyors is really important because they might do a survey maybe only twice a year, and therefore to keep them up to date, what's important as well in finding the right pick of teams we find from our perspective is to ensure that you have a good senior team and then bring in this member, another surveyor who might not have done as many surveys, so that during the survey the more senior ones can mentor the surveyor who hasn't been surveying maybe for a while. And the mix of very experienced and not so experienced, I think for us is quite important when we try to make sure that there's that skill mix. And also in terms of finding the right survey team, it's very important to have the right specialties and information from the organization to match against what the keywords you have for the surveyors to select, so that you get optimization of the best survey team for a good fit and good experience for the two together. And what we find very important is always evaluations and feedback, because from that you will know the next time whether that surveyor needs more training or whether it's going to be the right fit for that type of organization.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. Then we have a question from Joyce Kamanzi, who is from Rwanda in Africa. So she's surveyor, trained with Joint Commission International. And she's basically interested in you sharing the results of your study with Africa countries, but she also has a question, so we can sort it out. We can contact Joy separately if you wish to share the results. And then her question stands as follows. Don't you think that surveyors' accommodation and time allocated to the survey can be an issue of performance for surveyors?
That's a good question actually, because it is a balance of whether you have the right number of surveyors and also the length of time is appropriate as well. So from our perspective, because we have been in the accreditation business for 40 years, most of our organizations have been with us as members for a very long period. So in terms of getting the right mix for the number of surveyors and the length of the survey, we haven't had issues in that. And that's why I think it didn't come out as issues identified for inter-rater reliability, because the surveyors that we have not experienced that. But I can imagine that there is a possibility that that could be an issue for a survey team if they're stressed because they are rushed and there's no time to look for things, and those might become issues as well. And that was in a way part of extensions of my study would be, what if you looked at surveyors from a different country who are not as long in the industry, in the accreditation business, or is it the same issues as well for other types of accreditation, such as accreditation of hotels, accreditation of schools? Would they find the same issues? So, or if, for instance, I would do a study and survey surveyors who have left us, the outcomes could be quite different as well. But those would be other opportunities for research as well.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. So the last question for today would be as follows. To ensure survey reliability, does ACHS continuously assess surveyors? And are the surveyors required to take any CPD courses?
In relation to surveyor training,
Yep.
Definitely. They do have to evidence that they have done the mandatory quizzes. They do have to evidence that they have completed e-learning components as well, attend the surveyor development days. And these are really some key elements of their surveyor training requirements. in relation to CPD points, because they're peer reviewers and come from the industry, so they are medical directors, directors of nursing, part of their experience is very current from their jobs. So what we need from them is that they complete the modules that we give as an accreditation agency, because their practical experience from the health industry is still very current, but the focus we have is definitely on that they have to complete compulsory modules with us.
Thank you, Dr. Low. We still have one more question that came in. If you are okay to answer that, we can we can answer all of them during the session. So it came in from Ian McGrath, and he's asking, how about payment to volunteer surveyors drawn from the medical sector? He mentions that they cover travel and accommodation, etc., but no payment, partly to keep costs down, but also for ethical reasons. Does this influence the surveyor?
What we have is basically, and the earlier part of that first part of my PhD actually that I didn't go into was actually looking at what motivates medical clinicians to become surveyors. And most of our medical clinicians are actually volunteers. So we pay their travel costs and accommodation, but we don't pay them an honorarium. A lot of it from the findings and interviewing them was that they want to become a surveyor, and they're currently still working, a lot of them, is because of altruistic reasons, and they want to give back to the healthcare industry. They want to network. They enjoy a lot the networking with other people from the industry. They go to learn from other organizations that they survey, and they bring it back to their own organizations as well. The other side of it is basically the ability to take time out for them to go on a survey. But in relation to, for instance, we just recruited 16 new surveyors, and we focused on medical clinicians because we needed doctors, and we had 65 applications and we took only 13 of them, and all of them were very keen and basically volunteers in the whole process, because they want to be part of a contribution to the healthcare industry and make a difference that way. So it's an interesting situation where I don't think it creates an issue from that perspective, because the Australian medical clinicians, and even for us internationally, in Hong Kong, for instance, all the we have more medical clinician surveyors than any other type of surveyor, and they're all volunteers because they want to do it, and that makes a difference.
Thank you, Dr. Low. That's going to be the conclusion for our session today. Just to remind everybody that the recording of this webinar will be available on the ISQua website within 24 hours from the actual live webinar taking place. So if you know somebody that might find this information useful, please pass the information to them. And I would like to thank Dr. Lena Low for this fantastic session, for sharing practical tips, and I'm sure we will hear more from her in terms of inter-rater reliability and experience of the surveys from different countries. And then I would like to thank her for staying up late, because it's late in Australia kind of at the moment, so staying for up late and delivering the session to us. And I would like to thank the audience for joining us and being a fantastic audience, answering so many questions. So once again, Lena, it's a pleasure to have you, and I hope we will hear more from you, and you will deliver a couple of more webinars for us.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your time with me.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Goodbye.